Hey, Brent Garrison, consultant over at H2V. So I just got off the phone with a client, and I asked him if it'd be okay if I used his story as an example of kind of what we do, and he said it was perfectly fine. So just kind of wanted to talk about it and kind of show you how it's different than just construction. So I had this client when I was very first starting out, and he was actually recommended to me from someone I knew in the service when I was still in the military. And a buddy of mine told his friend, he's like, hey, pretty sure this guy that I know lives in Florida. He's pretty good at this kind of stuff. You ought to hit him up. And so I get to talking to this guy, and turns out he's like, at this time, I think he's 24 at this point in time. This is around 2021. And he decided that he wanted to start a power washing company. He had been watching a bunch of YouTube videos, watching people making money power washing, and thought, man, that's kind of something I would like to start. And so I didn't know anything about power washing. I didn't really have an interest in it or anything, but I thought, you know what, like, let's see if I can make this work. So the first thing I told him to do is say, hey, you're watching all these power washing videos. Does any of them sell a course? I bet they do, because that seems, to be the thing. And he found one guy he really liked. He bought his course. I watched the guy's course as well, and it was actually pretty good. The guy did a really good job showing you how to power wash, how to mix chemicals, and very basic marketing, but better than no marketing. And kind of was showing you how things could go. So I told him, man, you need to study this, you need to understand it, because when the day comes when you finally do get your first customer, you don't want this to be new. You don't want to be figuring it out. So I told him, take a minute to actually watch this stuff and know it. He did that. So the next thing I told him was, I said, hey, the name of the game here is to buy everything you need with none of your money. You want the clients, the customers, to pay for it. Of course, people go, well, how do you do that? Well, so what we did is I said, hey, do you have any money saved up? He said, yeah. I said, okay, how much? A couple $1,000, I think like $3,000-4,000. More than zero. I said, do you have good credit? And he did. And just, side note here, if you don't have good credit, there's ways to fix your credit in like 30 days. I've done it. When I got divorced, my credit got shot. I think I had like a 560 when it was all said and done. In 30 days, I was back up to like a 675. By the second month, I was back in the 700s. There is ways to do it. There's tricks, but that's another topic for another time. So he had good credit, luckily, and I said, okay, cool. Well, the first thing I want you to do is take out a business credit card. He did. Then the next thing that we did is I said, and listen, you're not going to use it unless you absolutely have to. The name of the game isn't even to use your money, period. But if you got to use it, you got to use it. But this is for in-case emergencies only. So what we did was we got on Zillow, and we found some neighborhoods that were kind of close to where he was. And what we did was I was looking for the date. When was this house built? Okay, it was built in 2012. Okay, so it's not brand new construction. And all these houses in this subdivision are pretty much, they're spec homes, right? So what that means is there's like one of three floor plans, right? So you might have, the smallest house might be 1,800 square foot, and the biggest house in that neighborhood might be 2,300 square feet. And when it comes to power washing, you charge by the square foot. So what we did was I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go out and we're going to find these neighborhoods that are older without driving anywhere. We're going to, on Google Earth, you can actually, there's a measuring tool. And I said, measure out the roof and find out what the square footage is, right? So then measure out the driveway and figure out what the square footage of that is. And what we discovered was that actually for the driveway was kind of a waste of time. Just run a flat fee. I think at that time we were doing $100 a driveway, because, I mean, it's not like he just needed revenue starting to come in, right? So we more or less figured out how much it would cost to do the roof. And then on Zillow, it'll tell you right there what the square footage of the house is. So you don't need to measure anything out. And what I did was I searched around and called around and found a company that made door hangers. And I told them, hey, listen, I need you to put out, make a door hanger for power washing. We kind of designed it and somewhat, told them what we wanted. And they designed it and basically said, I needed to say driveway, $100. And then what we did was we said, okay, the smallest roof is this much square feet. The biggest roof is even more square foot. So if you were to times it by $25 a square foot, for example, this roof might cost $1,200 and the big roof might cost, $1,800. And, there's a middle roof there that might cost, let's say $2,000, and there's another one that would cost like $17,000. The third house, because remember, spec homes, there's 3 homes, typically in a neighborhood, 3 different types. Sometimes more, but usually 3 at least. And so what I said was, what we're going to do is we're going to just cut that in the middle, call it $1,300, So we'll do your roof for $1,300. Doesn't matter if the roof's big, small, you're still going to be profitable, but you've now got money coming in. And so that's what the door hanger said. It said, your house, power wash your house, driveway, $100, roof, $1,300, and the whole house, $1,900, right? And we just went and put door hangers on doors, knocked on the doors. Well, I had him. I say we, I didn't do it, but I told him just go door knock. And door knocking does work if you do it right. People hate it. I know I do. But if you just knock on the door and say, hey, we're getting ready to power wash one of your neighbors, just wanted to give you this. Have a good day. And just walk away. A lot of times they'll be somewhat decent. You do get people that are mean, but it is what it is, right? Get thick skin is all I can say. And if they don't answer, just put the door hanger on the door like it's designed to. So he did that. I think we did that for several neighborhoods. 30 days go by, didn't hear anything. 60 days go by, didn't hear anything. 90 days go by, didn't hear anything. So I tell him, I say, you know what? Let's reach out to HOAs and see if they can get, maybe the HOA will pay us or pay you, specific, not us, but you, to come in and wash people's homes. Because, HOAs here in Florida, they're pretty strenuous. They're pretty uptight about their neighborhoods. So next thing you know, we're calling the HOAs and they wouldn't pay for it. Imagine that. But what they would do is basically spread the word that, hey, here's a company and here's their prices. You should consider hiring them. And they do it within their little community. Hey, it's better than nothing, and it didn't cost anything. So we gave them one of the door hangers and they gave those prices. And we did that for a bunch of neighborhoods. And they actually let us in because a lot of times with these like Facebook groups, especially with like community groups, there's like an administrative person that has to let you in. And so we said, hey, can we get in on your Facebook group? And they let us in. So we started posting and advertising there. So a couple more months went by and still didn't hear anything. And at this point he's kind of getting discouraged, like, man, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I was having to tell him, like, you got to understand, man, these things take time. When you finally do get calls, it's from the work you did 6 months ago, right? 3 months ago. And nobody wants to hear that, but the truth is if you go start spreading the word today, you're like, you might get a call or two, but like thinking you're going to get 100, 200 calls, you're kidding yourself. So then I said, you know what we got to do, man, is we need to reach out to some maybe like apartment complexes. So I make up this mock script and kind of help them interview for the person that could be the decision maker at an apartment complex on to say yes or no. And he got good results from it, but it didn't land anything. Like, they were very interested, but just not right now, And what we kind of came to figure out was, over time, what finally clicked is I think around that time it was hurricane season, and then winter popped up for us. And turns out nobody really wants to power wash during the winter. As it gets warmer, they actually want to they're more apt to have everything clean, right? Because it just is that way. I don't know why. And so, but I made sure to make a note of that and say, solve that problem, in which we did. And so basically, more or less what happened is we just kept putting out flyers. Flyers are cheap. And he had his day job still. And finally one day he started getting calls. And I think he got the first call, and I told him, when this day comes, this is what you're going to need to say. You're going to want to say that, hey, it's going to be, I'm super booked right now, and it's going to be probably 2-3 weeks out before I can get there. Is that okay? And if I can get you in sooner, I will, and I'll notify you. They were fine with it. Finally, after months of doing this, he starts getting phone calls. And I think out of nowhere, he got like 100 driveways and like 2 house washes. Well, 100 times 100, you do the math, that's 10 grand. So back to the point where this is how you get the customer to pay for the equipment. He now had people saying, yeah, I want my stuff washed. And he's saying, okay, we'll notify you when we can get to it, and it'll be probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. He's notifying them, hey, I can come this week. They're excited. Here's what we did. Went up to Home Depot, and I said, ask them if they have a Net 30 account. They do. You have to get on the contractor, their contractor program, but it's free. You just sign up. And that's what we did. We walked over, we got the power washer that the dude's course recommended, and we got it right then. We walked out the store and didn't pay a single penny, because the way a Net 30 works is that you get it today and you pay it 30 days later from that day. So we went to Pinch a Penny, which is a pool supply company. And turns out when it comes to power washing, you don't necessarily want just the main ingredient is bleach and sometimes acid, but mainly bleach and water. And you dilute that bleach. Well, it turns out you don't want to use like Clearox. You want to use like commercial grade, like swimming pool bleach. Hyperchlorodium chloride or something? I can't remember. Bleach. It's just bleach. Sodium hyperchloride. There it is. So, but you want the strong stuff, and you can get those at pool companies. So we went to Pinch a Penny, and we said, hey, do you guys have a Net 30 account? They did. So we bought it all on a Net 30 in the business name that he had. And so just like that, boom, he goes and does the driveways. He's got $10,000. He pays the invoice back at Home Depot and at Pinch a Penny. And just like that, when it was all said and done, I think he had like $7,000 left over after the equipment and the chemicals. And then he still had 2 actual house washes to do. So it worked out really, really well for him, and that was how he got his start. And that's just a prime example of how you can do these sort of things. So the next thing that ends up happening is I told him from the jump, I said, here's the deal. Do you want to be a business owner or do you want to be self-employed? Because I'm going to be straightforward with you. I could kind of see where this is going, and I think you're going to end up being self-employed, which means you've created a job for yourself. You're going to have to wake up every day and go to work and work that job. And the reason that is because the barrier to entry is so low that anybody can start. That's both good and bad, right? You can start, but so can everybody else. And that ended up happening, and we'll get to that in a minute. But he said he was good with it. That's what he wanted. And I think, really, if I'm going to be truthful, and no offense if you're watching this, my client, I think he thought, no, it'll be a business. And, fair. And so he's making good money, man, and he's doing well at this point. And so one of the problems we had to solve is hey, his phone was ringing like crazy. And so we hired a call center to take his calls. And I think it was literally $150 a month. It was great. And so that way that worked is they would call, we gave them a script for them to read, that said, hey, thank you for calling his company. And then they would ask the questions, are you looking for your driveway, your roof, or your house, or all three? They would say what they were looking for, and then they would text my client, the person who wanted to get his services, their phone number, their email, and their what they wanted, the service they wanted, worth the $150 a month, honestly, because now his phone was only getting texts and not ringing constantly. So then he could take that phone number and send them the quote. He had time to get on Google Earth and then send them the quote. It was a beautiful system. So one of the other things we had to do was we had to get him, and this is going kind of back more towards the beginning, we had to get him to start an LLC, and then we took that $7,000 that he made originally that I was talking about, we got him incorporated, we got an attorney to write up a contract for the client, for the customer, basically saying like, hey, like if you leave a window open and we wash your house and the inside of your house gets a bunch of water in it, that's on you. You should have closed your window. You knew we were coming. We tell you when we're coming. You know, things like that. Just start covering your stuff. And one of the cool things that attorney actually did was put in that by you accepting the quote and accepting the price and accepting the work, you agree to these terms in this contract. And what we also did was we made it to where whenever we sent the quote, we also sent the contract as an attachment. Not trying to hide it from them, but it's not my fault you didn't read it. And we also would, you know, and also I'm not saying screw people. We would tell them like, hey, you know, make sure your windows and everything are closed and, you know, this, that, and the third. So we got a lawyer to draft up a really good contract. We got him an LLC, and then we started doing more of the search engine optimization stuff online. So we started building out his website, started, you know, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that. He started filming himself doing this stuff and posting it and all that good stuff. And he started getting traction, which is great. So then he decided that, you know, this is going to be a business. I told him he was going to be self-employed, but this is going to be a business. And exactly what happened. What I said would happen, happened. And he hired a guy. The guy worked there for like 6 months, learned everything he needed to know about power washing, bought his own stuff, and went and undercut him and took a lot of his customers. And as you can imagine, he was pretty upset about that. It took him a couple years to get to where he was, you know, where he was making $25,000 a month. It took him years to get to that point. And this guy came in and did exactly what he did. And I had told him several times, man, if you're going to hire an employee, you need to make sure, because of the barrier to entry being so low, that you want to make sure that they can sign a non-compete agreement, right? And he didn't do it, and that's what happened. So what we had decided to do next was focus on commercial buildings. So we started going after like gas stations and Costco's and banks, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's. And what we did was we actually said, hey, like have a lawyer draft up a contract that can do, you know, 2-year obligations, right? For this set price. You're locked in at the set price for 2-3 years. And he managed to get some of those. And they paid very well. I think with just like 3 apartment buildings, he was making like $100,000 a year off of those, like per apartment, if I'm not mistaken. So he's making $300,000 a year at that point. And that's not to mention the he was getting random gas stations here and there and Chick-fil-A's here and there. I know he got like he got a Wawa, a gas station here in Florida and all over. He got a couple banks. And the banks also agreed to a 3-year contract, which was awesome. And so it started working out for him. And I said, hey, listen, now that you're making this kind of money, we need to sit down and we need to figure out what's the number you need to survive to maintain this lifestyle that you have. So we sat down with his accountant, and and that was another thing. We hired an accountant whenever he got some of that money in the beginning. And so what we ended up doing was saying like, okay, he needed like $175,000 to $200,000 to maintain the lifestyle that he had. you know, between the trucks, the cars, the wife, kids, vacations, house. You know, he had built this certain way of life that he wanted to maintain. And now he was bringing in, like, I mean, I don't know. I can't remember. It was like 2 years ago. He was bringing in like 400, 500K, I think. It was definitely somewhere in that ballpark. And I said, okay, 200,000, that's your number. That's your salary. You need to pay yourself that. And bear in mind, at this point, he only had like one other employee, and it was a family member. And one of the reasons we were doing this is because he said, dude, I'm getting tired. I work all the time. I'm working 7 days a week. You know, when you get these gas station contracts or like banks and stuff, something that I didn't even take into consideration, and we found out like this, is that, you know, banks don't want you power washing during the day because they got customers coming in and out. They want you to do it at night when no one's there, or like Sunday, right? Especially like Chick-fil-A, Sunday, gas stations at night. And then you had to buy a heater to get like the oil stains and the grease out. So that came with, you know, it was all new territory. It was like we had to relearn some stuff. And he was tired, man. He really was. He's saying, you know, I got me and my family member doing this, and we're both just tired. It's good money. I'm happy I'm making it, but I'm working 6-7 days a week, working nights, and I'm just exhausted. I'm missing my kids grow up. Okay, well, let's start planning for a new future then. Lucky for you, you've got money. So what we did is I told him, you need to start investing in real estate. Surprise, right? Everyone hears it. But his immediate response was exactly what I expected. And that was, dude, I don't have time to buy real estate and then have to answer the phone at 2 in the morning because a pipe burst. Like, I can't do it. I said, well, I don't want you to do it. So that's good. It's good news. I said, what I want you to do is I want you to take this money and I want you to buy a single REIT. A REIT is a real estate investment trust, and that you can buy on the stock market. And basically, I said, listen, you know, you're not a big baller. Probably for some people, they would think 500,000 is, but listen, you're not like a big baller investor making, you know, $100 million a year. You're doing well, but you don't have time to sit there and watch a bunch of stocks, right? You hear the diversify thing. Well, you need to diversify. Yeah, if you're rich, you got a bunch of money, and you're making, you know, 1% of your $1 million is, you know, bringing in a ton of money. Well, then yeah, but you're not big balling like that. I said, yeah, I meant 1% of 100 million. You know, where, you know, you're making a lot of money on 1% of $100 million. Yeah, you need to diversify and pay attention. I said, but you don't have that kind of time. Instead, what you need to do is put it all in one REIT and put all your eggs in that one basket and watch that basket like a hawk. I said, and here's the beauty of it. That REIT pays dividends every 30 days. And the way you can, that was the REIT I was suggesting to him. And the way you can find that out is just find REITs on Google, and then whatever the REIT name is, just type in that REIT's name, dividend history. And you can sit there and watch, like, some REITs pay out every 30 days, some pay out every 30, some pay once a year, twice a year. It just depends. And then it tells you how much they pay. And at the time, this REIT was particularly cheap. It was a REIT for here in Florida. I think at the time it was like $4 a share. Now it's like over 20. So he made money on that, obviously. But every 30 days, it was paying him dividends. And I think it was like 20 cents a share. So after the end of the year, he had jam-packed $300,000 of his own money into that REIT. And then he did what you call turning the drip on. And what that means is that every time that REIT paid a dividend, it went back and bought more of the stock of that REIT, right? So yeah, you got this dividend, but it never hit your account. It just went to buying more of that REIT. And you do that because when you turn the drip on, you don't pay capital gains tax on those dividends. Well, and you know, if you ever want to sell, you don't have to hire a realtor and do all this. You can just hit sell with the press of a button, and you're out of real estate that day. So that's what he did. Ended up making pretty decent money on it. And I think by the end of the year, he had like, I think he put $300,000 in it. By the end, that REIT had, between the dividends and the stock going up, he ended up making like, oh man, I want to say like, he had like $600,000, $700,000. And we used that money. We didn't sell the REIT, but we used that to go buy an apartment complex. obviously the apartment complex. We did it on, it was kind of a blend, right, of a DCSR loan. That's for another conversation. With security back loan, that's also another conversation for another time. But more or less set it up for that, and he basically made it to where he could live off the rent from that apartment. He sold off all of his equipment, sold his contracts to a local guy that wanted to get into power washing. Heck of a way to start. That kid started out the gate strong. He didn't have to build anything, he just bought it. And then he took that money and bought more REITs with it. And obviously, as time goes on, the people living in those apartments, they will pay the mortgage. You know, what he will owe will go down, the market will go up, he'll have that spread. You can do a cash out refi and buy more apartments. Again, there's more talk on that later. That's another topic. But the point is this guy started out as a power washer and now is doing real estate. And I think it's pretty awesome. And I think now, we were actually just talking, I think he's wanting to get into starting another business. But we'll see. You know, we'll see where it goes from there. I think he's wanting to do something in the construction space, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if he's serious or not. But I thought that was a good story. A lot of takeaways from it, and it just goes to show you that, you know, a lot of the stuff that we know isn't just for construction. It can be, you can use it for pretty much any industry. It works really, really well. So that was a pretty cool story. Just wanted to share it. I thought it was cool that he said it was all right that I shared his story. But yeah, man, I mean, and it just goes to show you the difference between being employed, self-employed, and owning a business. You know, when you're self-employed like that, you're going to be working that job. And so he, you know, it's funny, the irony of it all is he started that business, self-employed, because he wanted to not work for somebody. He wanted to be his own boss. Well, and then what he found out was, what I was trying to tell him was, the customers and the people you have contracts with, they're your new boss. And so he was working like a dog, man, but he made good money, and it all worked out for him in the end. And I was really happy for him. It was a good deal. But you know, 5 years, it took him 5 years to get to that point. But it can be done. It can, and we learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot from it. I learned more about SEO, search engine optimization, and these are skills that he's learning now, even using for his apartment complexes that he owns. You know, search engine optimization. He did the smart thing and hired out property, or he bought an apartment that already had people in it with a property manager already established that had been working it for years. But yeah, I mean, like that, you know, learning SEO and the call center thing, that was genius. I've used that a bunch. You know, stuff like that. It was really good, man. It was really, really good. The power of social media is insane. It got to where people knew him just from YouTube or Instagram or whatever. So it was very interesting. I learned a lot. And you'd be surprised, man. There's services out there that you can make a lot of money in, surprisingly, like power washing, like home cleaning services. Dude, there's ladies around here who are making $1 million a year cleaning people's houses, just going around cleaning their house. And I'm not gonna lie, the reason I know is because I hired one of them, and it's great. I mean, her services are great, and she makes good money doing it. So you never know, man. There's a million ways to make money, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. And again, I just thought it was cool to share that story. So until next time.